the year 1305. All of Scotland held its breath. The name William Wallace, once echoing across battlefields like a war trumpet, was now imprisoned, awaiting a death, calculated to the rhythm of each breath. To the Scots, he was the unyielding symbol of freedom, an unquenchable flame, but to King Edward I of England, Wallace was a threat that had to be erased, not just by sword and spear, but through a blood-soaked message carved into the memory of an entire nation. And so, from the shadows of betrayal, began a journey of torment stretching hundreds of miles, ending in one of the most brutal executions Europe had ever witnessed. A death not merely meant to kill a man, but to destroy a legend. An August night in the year 1305. Near Glasgow, heavy fog draped over the damp dirt roads, the sound of hooves fading into the darkness. In a secluded house, William Wallace, the man who had once brought the mighty English army to its knees, believed he was being sheltered by his own people. But it was there that the hand of betrayal reached him. John de Menteith, a Scottish knight, under secret orders from the English crown, skillfully led Wallace into a trap. No clash of swords, no battle cries, only the cold moment when iron shackles locked around the hero's wrists. It was not a victory won on the battlefield, but a silent hunt in the shadows, where loyalty was sold in exchange for favour and power. And from that moment on, Wallace's journey was no longer about winning freedom, but about becoming a living testament to the absolute power of the English crown. A journey where each step, each rattle of the chains, became part of a public spectacle designed to instill fear and to kill not just the man, but the very symbol named William Wallace. Immediately after his capture, Wallace was not treated as a prisoner of war. He was not granted the honour of a defeated knight. To the English, he was a trophy, a head symbolising the submission of an entire nation. They bound him in iron, perhaps fitted a metal collar around his neck or locked him in an iron cage. Then began the journey of over 300 miles from Scotland to London. But this was no secret transport. On the contrary, it was a public display. Towns along the way were notified in advance. Crowds gathered, packing both sides of the road to see the man who had once shaken England. Children threw stones. Adults spat. Curses mixed with mocking laughter. For the masses, it was a rare form of entertainment. But for the English authorities, it was a chilling message. Anyone who dared to defy the crown would be paraded like an animal. Wallace walked through muddy roads, cutting winds, his clothes in tatters, without proper food or clean water. Each step was a prolonged humiliation. Yet throughout the journey, he did not beg, did not weep. That silence left many who expected a broken man sorely disappointed. Upon arriving in London, Wallace was imprisoned in the Tower of London, a fortress that served both as a prison and a symbol of royal power. But to Wallace, it was no different from a living grave. He was locked alone in a cold, damp cell, stone walls dripping with moisture, with only rats and darkness for company, no contact with family, no priest to hear confession. No one was allowed near. This was not imprisonment for a fair trial. It was the English crown's way of cutting him off completely from the world, denying him any chance to become a new banner for the resistance. Though fully aware that death awaited him, Wallace still refused to sign any confession, still refused to acknowledge Edward I's authority over Scotland. This steadfastness both angered and unsettled his captors. On the 23rd of August, 1305, Wallace was taken to Westminster Hall. The trial, in name, was a hearing, but in reality, it was a stage where the sentence had already been written. The charges came in rapid succession: treason, murder, rebellion, destruction of towns, slaughter of English civilians. Wallace responded with a single line that silenced the room. "I could not be a traitor, for I was never his subject." To him, King Edward held no lawful claim over Scotland. Wallace had fought not for personal power, but for his homeland's independence. Yet that day, in Westminster Hall, reason and truth had no place. The sentence was set to be hanged nearly to death, then castrated, disemboweled, beheaded, and quartered. A sequence of tortures designed not just to end a life, but to destroy honor and erase memory. That morning, Wallace was not led, but dragged on a wooden board tied to a horse's tail. The streets of London were packed, the air thick with the smell of sweat, garbage, and fresh blood seeping from wounds caused by the dragging. He was brought to Smithfield, a place usually for markets, but that day, it became a stage of death. Thousands gathered, some out of curiosity, some from hatred, and there were also silent, sorrowful eyes. Wallace was hanged until near death, then lowered, not to die, but to suffer more. Then came the castration and disembowelment. His organs were removed and burned before his eyes. Witnesses claimed he remained conscious for most of the torture. Finally, the axe severed his head from his body. The head was tarred and placed on a spike at London Bridge, where thousands would pass by and see it each day. The remaining 4 parts of his body were sent to 4 major towns, as a warning to the English crown. This was a total victory. But they had underestimated the power of a symbol. Wallace's death did not extinguish the resistance. It planted an undying seed in the hearts of the Scots. 9 years later, Robert the Bruce led Scotland to defeat the English at Bannockburn, a historic turning point in the fight for independence. William Wallace died, but his name and story became legend. And as history has proven, they can kill a man, but they cannot kill an ideal.